about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So I have heard a few times, and I just saw another article, where Gen X is part to blame, or being considered part to blame, for what's been happening in today's society. And my answer to that is, excuse me, say what? No, I'm a Gen X. Don't be blaming all this BS, this college campus BS, or national security issues, or economy, or don't be blaming that on Gen X. But they are. Now, why? Why would anybody decide to mess with us Gen Xers? Gen Xers, I think, are one of the coolest. We're cool. We did nothing wrong. I think we did pretty darn good. But why are Gen Xers now being the focus? First of all, who are the Gen Xers? So Gen Xers are those who were born between 1965 and 1980. Baby boomers were 45 to 65, roughly. Although I know a lot of baby boomers who say, if they were born when daddy came home on leave, some people, even though they're called traditionalists, if you were born before 45, I am fine with, if you think you are a, wartime on leave baby, that's fine. If you want to be called a baby boomer, I'm fine with that. But anyway, baby boomers up until the 65, Gen X is 65 to 80, millennials roughly 80 to 95, Gen Z's 95 to 2010, Generation Alpha 2010 to 2025. And if they don't come up with a better name for Generation Alpha, Generation Beta is going to be 2025 on up. So roughly it's like a 15-year period. So us Gen Xers, 65 to 80, most of us grew up in the 80s, 70s, 80s. We were young adults in the 90s. And that's when we started to vote. And Gen X was the generation that might have put more attention on college. Gen X was probably one of the first generations to be less enthusiastic about joining the military, which I don't think was a good thing. But it was easier to go to school. There were much more campuses, much more opportunities, student loans. So many people in the Gen X generation said, I don't have to go through the military to get college. I can work, do other things. Gen X's seem to be very supportive of us moving towards tech and getting computers and AI out there. With all the movies and stuff we saw in the 80s and 90s, we wanted fax. We wanted computer. We wanted internet. We wanted email. And we were the primary consumers and pushed it. Generation X was also one of the generations to maybe slow down on some of the old corporal parenting, punishing styles. So many Gen X's weren't really into the belts and the beating and the other stuff. Gen X was like, you know what? We're going to do time out. We're going to do positive parenting. Gen X was also of the generation that looked a little differently at divorce, as opposed to baby boomers that were like, divorce still might be taboo. Gen X's were a lot more open to divorce. Gen X, however, was a lot more conservative from sex standpoint because of HIV and AIDS. Many of us were the condom generation. But with that also, Generation X, I think, had fewer babies. Generation X was one of the generations to not necessarily embrace where we have to have a super big family. Now this is on the whole. You had a lot of people who are Gen X's that still had 6 kids. Good for you guys. Well, it's wonderful. But for most of it, Gen X's we had a lot more women going to college. Gen X's had a lot more females in careers. And so Gen X's had fewer babies. I only had 2 children, much different than my mom who had 4. So so if somebody is trying to say that where we are today is because of Gen X, and it's saying, well, because of our pushing and drive for tech, for our fewer babies to be able to help support the older generations, the less disciplined, and they're trying to say that Gen X has now been the watershed generation to allow millennials and Gen Zs to say to hell with marriage, to hell with commitment. Let's just all do tech, forget about joining the military. Why would we do that? And, I wouldn't blame Gen X for things like that. I know people want to blame somebody. I just think society changed. When you can now meet people online for free, and it's a lot cheap. When you have individuals who are like, you don't have to take me out on a date and court me and marry me. I'll have sex with you. Things are going to change. That's not Gen X's fault. When you change the way, you're approaching, national security, and people are seeing what happens when our amazing men and women are overseas and suffer such horrible atrocities. The younger generation sees that, so they're less likely to want to be a wounded warrior or need care or need those houses that those charities are offering. And so tech and the way we've done media and all that has changed people's view in terms of traveling. Now you could see Italy, and you could watch a bald eagle and their baby eggs, in her baby eggs in a nest. You don't have to necessarily trek to that. Now, millennials and Gen Z still like to camp. They still like to serve their country. They still like to do things. But but just because things changed, with our generation, doesn't necessarily mean that you could blame some of the stuff that's going on us. But it is interesting to see what each generation did in terms of contributions. And we contributed some really damn good music. 1-877 Doc Daliah, don't go away.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. MediShare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Daliah. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our Fantasy Football Pocket Guide for Beginners found on Amazon, or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians, only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
right. Welcome back to the Dr. Daliah Show. So, 4th of July is coming, and some of you are going to be singing the national anthem. Family wants you to sing it. There's going to be fireworks, barbecue, and some of you maybe just have always wanted to sing it, but you've been too nervous about singing it. And I want to give you guys some tips. If you are not the Whitney Houston, the Jordan Sparks, the Christina Aguilera, the Beyonce, you could still sing the national anthem. It's not going to be as good because they really crushed the national anthem. But it's a beautiful song. It's an anthem, one of the most difficult to sing. And I think fewer people sing it because they're intimidated about them being able to sing the song. And so I got some tips for those of us that don't have killer voices on how to get through the Star Spangled Banner and do it in one piece. So rule number 1, don't try to sound like Whitney Houston or Beyonce or Jordan Sparks. Not going to happen. And nobody's expecting you to. Nobody's expecting if you get up there, well, at the game, at your kid's game, at the barbecue at church, nobody's expecting you to be able to knock it out of the park like they do. So already get that off your shoulders. It's okay. Number 2, and I've given you guys tips before, is, start low. There is a lot you need to do when you get to the high notes. And the rockets glare, the bombs bursting in air. You want to make sure that you are at the stronger part of your range. And so a big mistake people do is they start too high with the, oh, say, can you see? Well, by the time you get to the high notes, you're screwed. So start low. Keep in mind, you might not hit those low notes very well, but if you feel like you're going to preserve the range, it's worth the sacrifice. Now, again, I'm not teaching people who could sing. These are for those of us who can't sing. So if you are going to sing the Star Spangled Banner, oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? I know it's low. It doesn't sound that good, but at least it preserves your range for later on. And it's amazing how much you practice. You could get lower notes. Let's try lower. Oh, say, can you see? You can whisper it. Sounds a little sexy, a little raspy. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? Hey, I don't care. As long as you could get through that part so you could open up your range. Tip number 3, do not overdo it with the song. And the rockets glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. It doesn't have to be super fancy. And I understand that the blockbusters or these rock stars can just hit the notes and do the runs and go, oh, the land of the free, and then just go off. You don't have to do that. Get the song sung and then sit the hell down. Right? Sing it any way you can. So how, can we distract people if our voice isn't that good? Okay? Because number 1, when people listen to you sing the national anthem, they're putting their hands on their heart. They're thinking about their country. They're thinking about their freedom. They're not thinking about you being off key. Now, I have seen some Star Spangled Banners where the person is off key for most of the whole song. So what? Good for them for singing it. So don't panic about being off key. We all go off key. I've heard some of the best singers go off key. That's just a part of your voice. That's just what happens. It's okay. You could have a bad day. It could be dry. Maybe you didn't wet your whistle. So you don't panic about the off key. But what you can do is you could work on your strengths in the song. So if there's something you think you can do that you want to add to it, you could add to it. Try to just sing the song because I really think a lot of people ruin the song. But if you're like, look, I don't think it'll sound good, but I could do a little run or I could go up in a note and make it work, well, then try that. So we're going to start low, right? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we've hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. Now, let's say you don't want to go low. You're like, look, that low note didn't work for me. Well, then you don't have to. So gallantly streaming. Then go up. You don't have to go low. You can change it. You're still saying the words as long as you get the words right. Right? So, was so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Now, let's say you don't want the low. Let's say you're like, the low doesn't work for me. I'd rather go high. Then you could go, proof through the night that our flag was still there. And then you could go high. You don't always have to go through the tune as long as you don't screw up the words and you don't overdo it. Let's say you want to show off a little bit. You want to make it a little powerful. All right. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night. You could, if you could do some runs, you could do it. I wouldn't overdo it. I think it could kind of ruin the song. But if you feel like you want to show there are some aspects to your singing repertoire, why not? That a flag was still there. Now, let's say you can't hold a note too long. Don't. But sometimes you could hold a note in the lower range than the higher. Then that's when you hold the note. If you think you can't do the land of the free, if you don't think you could hold that note high, you don't have to hold that note high. You could hold some of the other notes. Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave. And you're done. But for those of you that want to kind of make it a little bit more fancy, you could go, oh, the land of the free. You could go into a falsetto. Some of you want to maybe not concentrate on the falsetto. Oh, the land of the free. Not my favorite, but it's something you could do if you feel like you want to do something there. Personally, I like the shorter, the sweeter, the better. Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Now, this is the final tip. With the home of the brave, it doesn't sound like you completed one hell of a musical performance because of the way the song ends. Kind of seems a little anticlimactic. Well, a lot of people will add to the ending. And so, oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave. And I've heard some people go, America, my home. You could add something like that. Or the land of the free and the home of the brave, the brave, the brave. You could add a little bit something like that, if you wanted to. But one reason why that might be advantageous, if you don't think you nailed the song, is what happens after the national anthem. People are clapping. And if you need that clap, if you need that motivation, if you need that mojo, that might help propel you to one hell of an amazing ending of the song, right? Because people are clapping, right? Because it's the end of the song and they're not expecting you to keep singing and they're probably not even listening. So it's a freebie. So, oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave, America, my home. And then they'll clap even louder, cut you off, cover up any discrepancies you might have had in your, and you nailed it. So honestly, with the Star Spangled Banner, you could make it work and you could have a voice like mine, which isn't that good. Again, start low. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we've hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there, still there. Oh, who say does that star-spangled banner yet wave? O'er the land of the free and the home of the brave, the brave, the brave. Not the best, but honestly, you got the job done, right? Yeah, I gotta tell you guys, I love our country, and it's not the easiest song, and you don't have to be like some of the most amazing, amazing singers that have come before you or I to sing this song and knock it out of the ballpark. And remember, you are not singing at the Super Bowl. right? You are singing for your family, for your friends. And when you sing the Star Spangled Banner, it's not because you're trying to get a record contract. You're singing the Star Spangled Banner because you want to show your love for the country. You want to show that you are loyal, that you appreciate all who have sacrificed for you and sacrificed for this country, and you are very grateful to be an American. That's what the song is about. So enjoy it. And you know what? If you sing off key, it's still endearing. God bless America. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. So I am on the side of vaping is bad. We've seen vaping linked to erectile dysfunction. We've seen it linked to cavities. We've seen it linked to heart disease. We've seen it linked to seizures. There were reports of vaping linked to seizures, cancer risk. And so whenever somebody said that I'm vaping because it's safer than smoking, I would say I think tobacco smoke is deadly, causes clots, cancer, a whole variety of issues. I just can't say vaping is the safest alternative because we just don't know. Well, one issue that we have with tobacco smoke is it can cause COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is similar to asthma, a little unique, but roughly like what asthmatics may go through. And so if you're saying, all right, well, that's tobacco smoke, vaping won't do that. No, it looks like it will. A study has shown that vaping increases your risk of developing asthma by more than 200%. This comes from a study from University of Texas. They looked at health data of more than 40,000 people of all ages over the course of 5 years. And at the start of the 2022 analysis, none of the participants had asthma. By the end of the study, 10 in every 1,000 adults had developed it. Those who used e-cigs in the 30 days prior had even a higher risk of developing asthma, especially in early life, before the age of 27. So if you've never seen a vape pen, it's a very interesting contraption. You have the tank or cartridge. That's what holds the e-liquid, holds the battery, a heating unit to help vaporize the liquid. You can insert the e-liquid, the vape juice. It has nicotine. It has flavors. And it gets heated up into a vapor. Then the vape coil is in there, which is a wire wrapped in a spiral around the wicking material. Heats up, turns the liquid into vapor. There's a power button. There's a lithium battery. Now, you might say a cigarette is dangerous because it has tobacco leaves and it has pesticides and all the other crap that goes into it. I'm looking at this vape pen. I don't want that in my lungs either. And asthma is not fun. For those of you with children with asthma, you hardly slept. Your child having an asthmatic attack or struggling to breathe is frightening. Always needing to go to the ER. Always needing to take medication, to always have an inhaler on standby. Worried that your child is not going to be able to breathe is not easy. You having it, it's miserable. And, I don't want to leave this earth, but one way I definitely don't want to leave this earth is not being able to breathe. And so your lungs are designed for air and what's in air. It's not designed for a tutti frutti watermelon food flavoring. That was never designed to be in the lungs. Nicotine, not supposed to be in the lungs, whether by a regular cigarette or a vape pen. In fact, what I learned in medical school was nicotine paralyzes the cilia. The cilia is your little brush border that spews, it brushes things out of your respiratory tree. Well, if nicotine paralyzes that, now you're getting more stuff into your lungs, microscopically. Now, some people will say, look, there's chromium, manganese, nickel, lead. I'm living in a city with pollution. What's the difference? The difference is you are giving a direct blow of that to your very delicate lung lining. We don't want that in our body. Asthma affects 25 million Americans, at least. I think there's more Americans that have asthma or reactive airway disease, which is a broader definition of it. Your airways become inflamed, they narrow, they swell, they produce extra mucus, so you struggle to breathe. According to Daily Mail, research from Johns Hopkins Medicine concluded 11% of e-cig users reported having asthma, compared to 8% of those who never use the devices. Now, they say of those who use e-cigs, 11% said they had chronic bronchitis, emphysema, COPD, compared to the 5.6% of people who said they never used them. And so, people are saying, look, vaping nicotine doesn't cause cancer like cigarettes do. Do we know that? If your cilia is being paralyzed because of the nicotine, then carcinogens can get into the lungs. I mean, and how do we know heated preservatives aren't carcinogenic? I think somebody said formaldehyde is a byproduct of what is being heated. Formaldehyde is carcinogenic. Jackson Allard, 22 years old, from North Dakota, had irreversible lung damage. He had to undergo, if you remember, we spoke about this a while back, a double lung transplant because he vaped for years. He was on life support for 70 days, went into surgery in January, and got a double lung transplant. It's just not worth it. Now, why are kids doing it? There are kids who never would have smoked that now are addicted to vaping. Is it because people like to have something in their mouth? Is it that people are using this so they don't eat? I told you, I had a patient who was smoking. I said, look, let me help you. She's like, no, I don't want to quit smoking. And I'm like, can I ask why not? She's like, well, how do you think I stay so skinny? I use smoking, she said, to minimize her obesity. That's one of the reasons why we have an obesity epidemic. People were using smoking to curb their appetite. Now that we did fantastic work educating people on how dangerous smoking is, people, they stopped smoking, but they gained weight. So some people are also using it to wake up. They can't stand school. They're bored. They like the kick they get with the nicotine, so they vape. Not healthy. We really need to educate students, but that's what they do. Kids like to smoke things. There's a big push for marijuana to be legal. And I'm mixed on that because I voted to legalize it in my neck of the woods because I wanted it studied. and I wanted the medical applications investigated, because I think there are some applications where we could use that. But on the flip side, I don't like seeing all these kids on it. I don't like seeing how, smelling it on the highway. I would lecture to kids when I was a guest speaker. One student, I think she was a high schooler, said, how do I get my parents to stop smoking pot when they're driving me to school? I don't want to smell it. Okay, we've taken it too far. Now, the Biden administration does want to reduce the schedule, reschedule it to a Schedule 3 from a Schedule 1. And I think it is going to happen. I know the Department of Justice wants to do it. I think there's been such a push because of all the legalization of it, but that doesn't mean it's safe. Marijuana, if people are smoking it, they're also getting carcinogens and pesticides and chemicals into their lungs. People are driving impaired. That one girl stabbed her boyfriend 108 times after doing marijuana. There's psychoses that can happen. We have to have some honest conversations about this. 1-877-DOC-DALI.
Considered by most, optimized curcumin is one of the few bioavailable and highly absorbable curcumin products on the market. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch. Since most chronic diseases have inflammation, our optimized curcumin seems to be a perfect addition to any nutritional program. It makes sense to me that preventing or reducing inflammation is a key component to our overall health. The Mayo Clinic found that curcumin can decrease swelling and inflammation, has antioxidant properties, and research suggests that curcumin can prevent cancer, or at least slow the spread of cancer, and in many instances make chemotherapy more effective. It protects our healthy cells even from radiation. TotalWellness.com, where we help you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Self-reliance. It's not a phrase we hear much in our culture these days. It might conjure up images of pioneers, the West, rifles, strapping men, and strong women. But what does it mean for us in today's world? The New American Magazine has just released its latest collector's edition, Self-Reliance, Foundation of Freedom. In it, the New American authors outline the necessity of self-reliance for a free people, tips for self-reliant living, and the importance of not giving up hope. This unique edition includes articles on the self-sufficiency of the founders, preparing for a worst-case scenario, firearms, financial self-reliance, the importance of community, and many other topics by expert writers. Now, for a limited time, the New American is offering a bundle of 3 collector's editions: Self-Reliance, The Great Reset, and Trump World for just $19.95. Available at shopjbs.org. Visit shopjbs.org today.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So late spring, summer, we have a surge of COVID. I'm seeing it. It's pretty obvious. Cough, sore throat. Some of you get fever, some of you don't. Some of you may get pink eye, some of you might not. Fatigue. Interestingly, many people feel like they have the flu, and they're calling into telemedicine companies saying, I have the flu. And I say, really? Did you test positive this late in the season? Flu season usually ends in May. They say, but I was COVID negative. Keep in mind, these at-home COVID tests are not always picking it up. These at-home COVID tests were designed for the 4-year-old virus. We have some pretty new strains. So if you do feel flu-like, please go get checked. We might still have some flu still circulating. That can happen. And I am suspicious that we might still be having some post-flu season flu cases. But we are seeing a huge surge of COVID, and to be aware. So the U.S. FDA has recommended that COVID vaccine manufacturers update their formulas for fall doses in an attempt to target the KP2 strain and the JN1 variant. Now, this announcement came a week after the agency's Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee to recommend a monovalent JN1 lineage vaccine. As of the end of March 2024, the KP2 variant, according to Fox News, was responsible for 4% of infections in the U.S., according to the COVID tracker at CDC. Yet 50% of infections were attributed to the parental strain JN1. A few weeks later, KP2 is now the cause of 28% of infections, and the JN1 variants have dropped in prevalence. It shows you how quickly this virus changes and evolves. So, according to Fox News, Dr. Mark Siegel, clinical professor of medicine at NYU Langone, said it makes sense to target the KP2 strain because it is becoming the predominant strain. It is surging in California as well as across the country. And the KP2 strain is highly immunoevasive, which means that immunity from previous variants and subvariants do not offer much protection. On the other hand, the vaccine will cause a production of immune cells and antibodies that will continue to protect you against previous variants and subvariants. Now, one of you had asked, why are medical experts still encouraging the vaccine? Well, and it's a very good question. So I have seen the gamut. I've seen people die of COVID. I've seen kids die of COVID. I've seen side effects with the vaccine. And as I've told you before, it's different strokes for different folks. For those of you who could die of COVID or have some severe side effects to COVID, you probably should get the vaccine. For those of you who could run the risk of having a side effect to the vaccine, you might want to talk to your doctor about other options. And so it's not an easy answer because how do you know? The average person who got a side effect to the vaccine didn't think they were going to get a side effect to the vaccine. The average person who got severely ill from COVID and died didn't think they were going to. And so it's still a very frustrating time. I have said time and time again, like with the flu shot, for some people, the flu shot is exactly what they need. It's a godsend. It protects them from pneumonia, from heart attack, from stroke, because flu can kill. Maybe not in and of itself, but by the secondary issues it causes, because flu knocks you for a loop. But some people, they don't do well when they get the flu shot. I've had family members that can't tolerate it. So, all right, you'll have to then be treated for the flu. Sleep well, eat well, build up your natural immunity. But we have vaccines, and the medical community will always support on the whole vaccines because of what happened with polio, because of what happened with tetanus. You know, when you have people die or get severely ill, and then we come up with a vaccine and prevent it, we're sold. But what we have to do as doctors is understand is not all vaccines are the same. Some vaccines might be just the, God's gift to us. And others might not necessarily be all that. And so when the flu shot comes out, and at its highest efficacy is 60%, which is good. If we could come up with a shot that manages flu at about 60%, it's pretty good considering flu is such a rapidly evolving virus. But we have to understand it's not going to be like the polio vaccine. Polio vaccine is pretty damn good, knock on wood, and I hope that never changes. I never want to see polio come back. So you need to decide for you what you need. And I have seen these vaccines save lives. I have been very grateful. But I've also understood that if you have a milder virus, you're going to be more hesitant, especially since you feel that side effects have not been disclosed. We have a lot of distrust of public health officials, and it's their fault. When we ask for transparency, when we ask for true numbers of deaths, when we ask for what exactly were people dying of, excess deaths, were vaccines causing side effects, were people passing out, and we saw videos of people passing out. Everything seemed to be hush-hushed, and they didn't have to. They could have been very honest. Americans aren't stupid. there were a lot of people that feared dying of COVID. And if they saw people pass out or have a cardiac arrhythmia or get a blood clot or go into TTP or ITP where they lose their platelets, I think the average American could make an educated decision about their health and say, look, I'm seeing the numbers of people die. I'm seeing what COVID did to my family members. I understand there's rare cases. Of side effects. Let me make a decision. But instead, public officials decided to minimize. And there was a bias in the news. And when somebody tried to say, hey guys, those masks you're wearing that have been in your pocket for weeks aren't protecting you, we got hushed. When we said, look, you can't really mandate a vaccine because there could be side effects and we really don't want to lose any more of our military men and women, and we don't want to lose any more nurses because you're firing them, nobody listened. We really want to work on natural immunity, and we should be testing people's natural immunity because we've had nurses on the front line who survived the initial COVID wave and now are getting fired for not getting the shot. Can we look at their antibodies? No. So sadly, we messed up. So now we're talking about getting a booster vaccine. And the government is very displeased with us for not enthusiastically getting our vaccines. I think only 12% got the latest booster of the COVID vaccine. And so I understand there's misinformation. Some people said that the vaccine would give North Korea chances to track you and China to track you. No, come on. But as a doctor, nothing is 100% safe. So of course, there could be side effects with it. As far as I'm concerned, if you are at high risk of having long-term COVID or any other sequelae, and you're like, I don't want to get sick, I don't want to get COVID, have at it. If you and your physician think the vaccine's the best thing to do, I am very grateful that we are making them. And yes, we should make them to cover the more recent strains. To me, I think it makes no sense that our testing is still, especially these at-home tests, are more targeting the older versions. We really need to update our science. But if you fear that you might be at higher risk of a side effect or you didn't tolerate the shot well, then work on your immunity. Make sure you have access to an antiviral in case you do need one, and talk to your medical provider about the best way to protect yourself. You might have to social distance. You might have to sleep in another bedroom if somebody in your family is sick. But you are not going to hear from me an anti-vax or a pro-vax stance. I'm going to do what we do in medicine. We have to figure out what is the best thing for people individually. And I'm grateful we have vaccines, but they have to be a choice. They can't be mandated. So we'll keep you guys posted. We are also, I guess they're working on the new flu vaccine. We'll let you know what that's going to cover. But yes, there is COVID. For those of you who are feeling ill, doesn't hurt to get yourself checked out. Make sure you do that. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com, where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.